ABC News and Time Magazine go full mainstream media, and you should never go full mainstream media, as President Trump forces Democrats' hand on the contrived non-troversy at the border, which I told you might happen yesterday when this news broke. We'll get to that. Then the Supreme Court raises our taxes, but foreshadows a possible huge victory for American liberty. We'll get into that. Finally, the mailbag. I'm Michael Knowles, and this is The Michael Knowles Show. I also want to address something that I put on Twitter yesterday. I was citing a Pat Robertson quote about how feminism causes women to kill their children and practice witchcraft and become lesbians and all that. And I use that to refer to soccer. This has gone internationally viral. I have Tory members of parliament in the UK tweeting about it. All these soccer journalists around the world. We will get to that because it really brought up a few interesting points. Before we do, Dollar Shave Club. I got to talk. If you want silky, soft skin such as I have, then you got to use Dollar Shave Club, baby. Dollar Shave Club is so good, and it is my favorite razor I've ever used. And I wasn't really a cheapo on razors. I'd have those cheapos for travel, but I always actually spent money on pretty nice razors, and this is the best one by far. I love it. I use it all the time. Dollar Shave delivers everything you need to look, feel, and smell your best. It has everything you need to get ready in the bathroom. Now, it has a lot of products. It's not just the razor. It started out, it was just the razor. Now they have Dr. Carver's shave butter, which is good. I usually shave dry, so I just get out of the shower and just go with the razor. But Dr. Carver's shave butter changed that. It's not that giant, foamy, yucky stuff. It's not that little soy boy gel, you know, it's a shave butter. It's really, really good. And it has everything: shampoo, conditioner, body wash, toothpaste, hair gel, even a modern disposable bidet. How can I call it that? These are one-wipe Charlies. Use your imagination. Here's a great way to try a bunch of Dollar Shave Club's products. For just $5, you can get their Daily Essentials Starter Set. It comes with body cleanser, one-wipe Charlies. Can't even say it without laughing. Their world-famous shave butter and their best razor, the 6-blade Executive, which is the best razor I've ever used. Keep the blades coming for a few more bucks a month and add in shampoo, toothpaste, anything else you need for the bathroom. Check it all out at dollarshaveclub.com/covfefe, C-O-V-F-E-F-E, dollarshaveclub.com/covfefe. It reminds me that 6-blade razor of a few years ago, hipsters started shaving with straight blades, because they're just so stupid. So this is a good idea. Let me just use a knife on my face. Not a trained barber. Yeah, don't do that. Use the 6-blade Executive. dollarshaveclub.com/covfefe. Okay. To begin, I sent out this tweet yesterday. I know, I actually must thank all of the viewers and the listeners who like soccer, which by my last count is 99.8% of them, because I have been on this holy jihad against the World Cup because I really don't like soccer. So anyway, I decided to kind of have a little fun with this and use a Pat Robertson quote, the televangelist, the squinty-eyed guy, and substitute soccer for feminism. So the quote from Pat Robertson is this: "The feminist agenda is not about equal rights for women. It is about a socialist, anti-family political movement that encourages women to leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians." This is, so I substituted soccer, and nobody got this. So I had conservative MPs in the UK tweeting, all these international soccer journalists, and nobody caught the reference. And I was really shocked because every conservative should know that quote. That is one of the greatest quotes in the history of the English language and of politics. It is so funny because it gets at this thing that I think conservatives should always play around with, which is you say a quote and then people don't know if you're kidding or not. You know, and maybe you're kidding, maybe you're not kidding, maybe you're just having a little fun with it, who knows. But the quote actually got me thinking, because it sounds so crazy, and Pat Robertson certainly says some out there things, but on this quote I said, I wonder if it's true. I wonder if there's any truth to it. It sounds so crazy. But let's just go through the points. The feminist agenda is not about equal rights for women. Obviously it's not. It is so awful and vicious to any woman who contradicts its orthodoxy. Sarah Palin, Sarah Sanders, we saw that. It's vicious, awful, cuts women off at the knees, says that women who don't, you know, become middle managers at the widget factory, women who choose to have children and raise them, that they're like fake women or something. There was a feminist journal that said that Sarah Palin is just pretending to be a woman, that she's not really a woman. So yeah, that's obviously true. It's socialist. Of course, we saw the Women's March after Donald Trump was elected. It was all anti-capitalism. We need to raise taxes. We need to, take over the means of production. I mean, it was very left-wing economically. Anti-family political movement that encourages women to leave their husbands. There's one of the most famous quotes in the feminist movement is from Irina Dunn, which is that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Certainly that's the case. The most famous feminist play is A Dollhouse by Henrik Ibsen, where at the end the woman leaves her family. He won awards from feminist organizations for that. So that, hard to say no. Kill their children. America kills 1 million children a year, 1 million babies a year in the womb. And we have since Roe v. Wade was decided by the Supreme Court. Then it gets a little kooky and you kind of wonder, because then he says it encourages women to practice witchcraft. And I don't know, could that possibly be true? But then I thought about it. And the modern feminist movement has this undeniable connection to occult imagery. The whole time, it always has. And I said, maybe I'm just imagining this, who knows? Then I said, the main feminist music festival, explicitly a feminist music festival from Sarah McLachlan in the 90s, is called Lilith Fair. And it was all female performers and there was no men allowed, right? And Lilith Fair refers to Lilith, a mythical demon who snatches away babies in the night and kills them. So I thought, that's a little weird. I wonder why they'd name it after that. Then I went to my favorite website, the greatest website on the internet, Everyday Feminism. I said, well, let's see. If there is this occult aspect of feminism, I bet I'll find it on Everyday. Oh, there it is. I said, I wonder if, and there it is. The second the page lands, this is like the third article on Everyday Feminism. The headline is 7 Ways to Use Spiritual Practice to Heal and Resist. And I'll just read you just the first 2 paragraphs of this piece. I can barely get through it. A handful of dried rose petals, an apple sliced with a spoon, piloncillo, and a few drops of sweet-smelling essential oils stirred into a pot of boiling water. This is the recipe to my mother's love potion, made to attract self-love, a physical manifestation of love to pour over one's body while reciting positive affirmations. She raised me with tons of remedios de la abuela, or remedies from grandma, from an onion on your belly button to relieve a fever, burning a palo santo to rid negative energy, to the belief that loving yourself is a radical act of resistance. All knowledge that was passed down to her from parents, tias y tios, and abuelos y bisabuelos, among others. Ancestral spirituality is a deeply personal practice. It's a vague term that essentially boils down to the act of connecting with one's spirit through, but not limited to, brujeria, herbalism, astrology, oracles, and much more. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. I actually was shocked. I did not see those connections, but you read that. That's like one of the main articles on Everyday Feminism. You say, oh, I guess feminism does have this bizarre connection to the occult. And then finally, Pat Robertson says feminism makes women want to become lesbians, or tries to make them into lesbians. And that one also, I said, that can't possibly be true. And then I read the Washington Post a couple weeks ago, where Susanna Danuta Walters, professor of sociology, director of the Women's Sexuality Gender Studies program at Northeastern, and editor of a major gender studies journal called Signs, wrote a piece called Why Can't We Hate Men? So I can't, maybe because Pat Robertson put that quote out in a fundraising letter in the early 90s, and everyone said he was a total wacko and crazy. And then, leave it to feminists to prove him right. Even if it wasn't right at the time, they say, oh, that's a pretty good idea, Pat Robertson, maybe we should do it. So anyway, I want conservatives to know that quote. It is one of the funniest quotes ever written in politics. You should know it and recite it frequently and see if your lefty friends' heads just explode when you say it. Moving on to important news of the day. This has been a banner day for the mainstream media. So you might have seen this chyron. Donald Trump tweeted it out. Who says the media are biased? Who says the mainstream networks are biased? ABC runs a chyron. It's a picture of Donald Trump on the screen. And then the chyron says, Paul Manafort pleads guilty to 5 charges of manslaughter. Paul Manafort, who was the head of the Trump campaign for like 5 minutes around the convention. He was brought onto the campaign to help get delegates at the Republican convention. And he's a longtime lobbyist. And, it seems like they've got him, the Mueller investigation has him on maybe some money laundering, maybe obstructing justice, whatever. They ship him off to jail. Thank goodness. Finally, our streets are safe. With Paul Manafort, a 70-year-old lobbyist, is in the clink. Thank goodness. And so they put him there, and then ABC ups his charges to 5 counts of manslaughter. Eventually, they apologize. They issue something. They say, "We regret and apologize for the false lower graphic. We're investigating how this happened, why it was allowed on air. We apologize." I know why it was allowed on air, because these crazy lefties working in your newsroom put it up there. They let it happen. That's why. Very, very strange, but not to be outdone. Time magazine posted its new cover, and its new cover is an imposing figure of Donald Trump staring down at a crying, cute little illegal alien baby or toddler, and it says, "Welcome to America." Trump is like the wall himself, right? And this is not the first time that Time Magazine has done this. Time Magazine has run a zillion covers against Donald Trump. They had one where he's looking into the mirror, and it's a picture of him as king, and it says, "King me." And this is unbelievable, by the way. Donald Trump is the least authoritarian president in my lifetime. This guy is constantly saying, "Can't do it. The law says this. I don't want it. I'm just following the law. I can't be an imperial president. I'm not going to make this decision unilaterally. I'm not going to force nuns to pay for abortions or contraception. I'm not going to force this group to do this. I'm not going to force this group to do that." And they call him an authoritarian because up is down and war is peace. They have another one where it's Donald Trump, and it's his screaming face on fire, fire in the background, right? That's Trump, because he's supposed to be furious and chaotic. Not at all. He's one of the least emotional presidents I've also seen in my lifetime. See, he's the Teflon Don. That's his new nickname from John Gotti. Then there's another one that they had. It was Donald Trump, and the Washington Monument was crumbling because the country is crumbling under Donald Trump, except that unemployment is at virtually all-time lows, and disability claims are way down, which means the Social Security Administration might be able to last more into the future. And we have a pretty booming economy, and the IMF says that it's Trump's responsibility for that booming economy. And we're finally taking a serious line on our trade deals. And our foreign affairs are looking pretty good. We've got North Korea coming to the table, possibly to denuclearize it. Other than everything going great, Washington is crumbling. And then finally they have the meltdown one. This is the Trump meltdown. It's coming, his face was melting. There's no meltdown. And this gets to a point that we're going to talk about later, this executive order that Donald Trump issued about the immigration separation at the border. This actually may have worked out all right. I said yesterday in the show when this news broke, I said it seems bad, but we've got to read and see what happened, because it seems bad on the surface, but maybe who knows how it actually looks. We'll get to that too, because there isn't a meltdown. Then in moving from the world of news media to Hollywood media, you have Peter Fonda, former actor Peter Fonda, the brother of that traitor, Jane Fonda. He goes out and he starts tweeting and says that we need to rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and throw him into a cage with pedophiles, see what happens. Then he called for riots in the streets, called for 90 million people to come out, start targeting politicians' children. And you saw this kind of a radical call to action from Tom Arnold, too. Tom Arnold didn't say any of the horrible things that Peter Fonda said, but it was that same, come on, you gotta do something, come on, everything's terrible, you gotta do something. Except all of the things that they're all screaming about now were happening under Barack Obama's administration in much worse ways. One thing about this news story, the bright side of this news story, the silver lining, is that every single day more terrible stories from the Obama administration come out that make Donald Trump look like a Boy Scout. This is according to the AP out today. According to a federal court filing, 14-year-old kids under the Obama administration, 14-year-old illegal aliens, were exposed to long periods of solitary confinement. They were found shivering nude on the concrete floor of jail cells. According to witnesses at some of these holding facilities, these kids would show up with bruises, broken bones, which were blamed on the guards. Under Barack Obama, here's some testimony. This is from one of the kids. Under Barack Obama, I don't know if I made that clear enough. Whenever they used to restrain me and put me in the chair, they would handcuff me, strapped me down all the way from your feet all the way to your chest. You couldn't really move. They have total control over you. They also put a bag over your head that has little holes. You can see through it, but you feel suffocated with the bag on. What year did that come from? 2018? Wrong. 2017? Wrong. 2015. That's when that happened. There was an ACLU report just in May. There was widespread abuse of illegal aliens from 2009 to 2014, all under Obama, and the mainstream media didn't say boo. They didn't say peep, because they don't actually care about this whatsoever. It is just the only cudgel that they can contrive and make up to attack Donald Trump, because everything else is going so well. So let's talk about this executive order. We got a little bit of time before the mailbag. This executive order came out yesterday during this show, and he said, okay, we're going to stop separating these families. We got to figure out a way to stop separating the families and keep them detained together until we can figure out their immigration situation, either prosecute or file for asylum or deport them. So we know all of the outrage is fake, right? We know, we've just demonstrated that. So my thought initially is, why would Donald Trump cave on this? This is a winner of an issue. We'll get to the numbers on it in a second. Why would Donald Trump cave? Why would he cave? First, you have to find out what the executive order says, as I mentioned, because that, you know, the devil's in the detail. So let's see what it says. It says that the Health and Human Services Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, will have custody of families during criminal proceedings and asylum adjudication. So instead of putting the parents with the U.S. Marshals and the kids with Health and Human Services, this executive order says Health and Human Services, Department of Homeland Security is going to have custody of these families during criminal proceedings. But the question is, which is it? Is this criminal detention, or is this some kind of government program, welfare program to detain people who have nowhere else to go? Which is it? Because the law says you can't put the kids in jail, and if you let the parents go and you don't keep them held in custody, then they'll just go and they won't show up to their asylum hearings or their criminal hearings. So then the executive order tells Secretary of Defense Mattis to construct facilities or use existing facilities to house them too. So now we've got multiple agencies, federal agencies, coming in here to talk about where we're going to house them. And then the order urges Attorney General Jeff Sessions to prioritize all of these proceedings so that the Flores consent decree, which says that the kids can't be in jail for more than 20 days, that might not even matter if we can get all of this taken care of within 20 days. The bill that Ted Cruz proposed would have done the same thing. It would say, let's take care of this within 14 days, then you don't need to worry about Flores. Okay, let's see if that happens. Actually, that last part concerning Jeff Sessions is a lot of the good stuff from Ted Cruz's bill is just in this executive order. But can it go through? We know from public polling that this is what most people want. Almost the majority of Americans, mid-40s, 44% or so, 42%, say that they want the families to be detained together but not released. Detained together, and then we kick them out of the country because it's a crime to come into this country. So also in the executive order, when Donald Trump was announcing it, he said, while it's consistent with the law and where appropriate, we will enforce these things. But that isn't consistent with the law. You can't jail the kids and you can't let the parents go. They've committed a crime. You can't just let them into the country. You have borders or you don't have a country. So on the one hand, this may mean that the executive order does nothing, right? Where consistent with the law and when appropriate, which is 0% of the time, might do nothing. But the thing that it did do, and I witnessed this myself on Kamala Harris's Twitter account, is it forced Democrats' hand. It forced them to show what they really think about immigration. And when it comes to Kamala Harris, it was hilarious the way that it happened. So Kamala Harris tweets out at I think it was 11:15 in the morning Pacific time, she tweets out, "This administration must end the zero tolerance policy, which has created this crisis. It can be reversed by the president right now." So then Donald Trump said, okay, that's fine. Here's the executive order. We're not going to separate them anymore. There you go. That's what you get. So then, right after he does that, we're talking not even 4 hours later, after she sent that first tweet, she goes, "This executive order doesn't fix the crisis. Indefinitely detaining children with their families in camps is inhumane and will not make us safe." What? What are did you read your Twitter account from 4 hours ago when you said, we need to keep the families together? Keep the families together. Separating the families is inhumane. Then 4 hours later, she says, keeping the families together is inhumane. So what do you want to go back to the other one? Because that's fine. That's why we just rip up the executive order, go back to but something tells me that even if we did that, then she would just go back and say separating families is inhumane. Because what do they want? They want open borders. That's all they want. Why do they want open borders? Because every day we arrest 1,000 people crossing the border illegally. Who knows how many are coming over? We know that those illegal aliens are more likely to identify with the Democrat Party by several multiples. And we know that even after staying in the country for a long time, or the children of immigrants and the grandchildren of immigrants are very, very likely to vote for Democrats, between 3 and 8.75 times more likely to vote for Democrats than for Republicans. So what the Democrats want is to open up those borders, flood the country with illegal aliens, so that at least 1 or 2 generations of the future, they're importing their own voters and they'll make the Republicans electorally extinct. That's just what the social science data bear out. So Trump forced their hand, right? Because she looks ridiculous. She made herself a laughingstock. She said, I demand this. He said, fine, I'll call your bluff. I'll give it to you. She says, oh, I don't really want that. Right, you don't want that because you want open borders. This is why the executive order seems bad, but really it could be a big win, especially if it doesn't actually affect policy, which it certainly cannot, because what it actually instructs the government to do is illegal. So it can't really do that. But this is why it might turn out great. Illegal immigration is a huge loser for Democrats. It is a big, big loser with a capital L. 19%, according to a YouGov poll that just came out, only 19% of Americans favor catch and release. 81% of Americans despise the policy of catch and release, which was our prior immigration policy. We'd catch these people and say, oh, well, we can't separate and this, and that's okay. You just go, but you better show up to your hearing. Right? Not even a chance they're going to show up to their hearing. The numbers get more interesting because 70% of Democrats oppose catch and release. Of Democrats. 67% of Hillary voters oppose catch and release. 64% of self-described liberals, of left-wingers, of the left part of the Democratic Party, which is now the whole Democratic Party, oppose catch and release. The vast majority of voters across virtually every demographic oppose open borders and catch and release. It's a big winner for Trump and for Republicans on this issue. And if he can force their hands and make them state out in the open, we're for catch and release, we're for open borders, just like he made Kamala Harris do, that's a big electoral winner. I think the Democrats thought that this issue, if they could contrive this fake crisis at the border, which has really been going on under Obama and they were silent the whole time, if they could contrive that before the midterms, that they would have finally get any momentum going into the midterms. And then Donald Trump basically flipped it right back on them. Really good strategery, Mr. President. Even, by the way, if you look further down the line to Donald Trump's base, independents, 83% oppose catch and release, moderates, 84% oppose catch and release, GOP, 93% oppose catch and release, among self-described conservatives, 93% oppose catch and release, and of Trump voters, 96% oppose catch and release. So it doesn't look like, as we feared with that executive order, it doesn't look like we're reverting to that anytime soon. He couldn't, because statistically, Trump's entire voting base opposes the policy. Very, very good. Before we get to the mailbag, I do want to talk about this Supreme Court ruling. There was a Supreme Court ruling came out today from the cases Quill Corporation versus North Dakota, and the question was on whether internet sites have to collect state taxes. Can states demand that internet sites collect state taxes even if they're out of state? Right? That's one way that internet shopping is so much better, is you can skirt a lot of taxes. The decision's pretty interesting. Some conservatives are angry about the decision, which will raise our taxes because it will allow companies to, or force companies to start charging state taxes on the products that we buy online. But some conservatives are complaining because the taxes go up. But it's actually a conservative decision, which is why it was 5-4. And it broke down Kennedy, who's a little bit of a squish, Ginsburg, the big lefty, and then 2 staunch conservatives, Alito and Gorsuch, and Thomas. I'm sorry, I forget 5. So 3 of the actual conservatives on the court, Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas, who's probably the most originalist, they were all in favor of this ruling. And Roberts, Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan, Roberts being a squish, Breyer being a lefty, Sotomayor an insane lefty, and Kagan, a fairly smart, still very left-wing woman, were all opposed to it. So the old precedent would protect these out-of-state sellers from being required to collect taxes. Gorsuch referred to this in the past as a judicially created tax shelter. And the thing we should take away from this case is not that it's a good thing that we're going to have to pay more money to buy stuff. That's very frustrating. I don't like that at all. But what we should take away is the health of the judicial philosophy of the conservatives on the court. Originalism or textualism, saying that the law means what the law means, that the words really have meaning and they don't just magically change over time. The Constitution isn't a living, breathing document that sprouts legs and starts dancing on the desk, right? It's a dead piece of paper with words written on it that have meaning. Because Justice Scalia said this to me. I had the privilege of meeting him a couple times before he died, and he said that the health of that philosophy is that if you're a good judge, you won't always like your decision. If you always like the decision that you come to, then you're probably not following the law and following the Constitution. But if you don't, if sometimes you're very upset with the decision you come to, but that's where the logic of the law has led, that means you're probably a pretty good judge. And that's what happened with conservatives today. So I think it's broadly a win, even though it's going to cost us money. Sad. Let's get to the good news. The good news on this decision is regarding Chevron deference. So Chevron deference is this principle that on matters of interpreting statutes, the courts should defer to the administrative agencies to whom the statutes apply. So it's because the administrative state, the deep state, the federal agencies have gotten so out of control. There's so many statutes that the courts have basically outsourced the interpretation of those statutes to the administrative agencies. This is obviously anti-constitutional. This is a really bad thing. In that same time I got to meet Scalia, he said the great threat to American liberty was the administrative state, this bloated administrative state. And Justice Kennedy just wrote, quote, "It seems necessary and appropriate to reconsider in an appropriate case the premises that underlie Chevron and how courts have implemented that decision." And Kennedy, Kennedy's the swing vote on the court, but he's joined on to opinions that have talked about this before, like Roberts' Arlington versus FCC dissent. He cites Thomas and also Alito, Judge Alito, who is then on the 10th Circuit when it comes to Chevron. This could be a monumental win for American liberty if the courts stop deferring to administrative agencies when they shouldn't, when those questions should be left to courts. That would totally upend administrative law and would be a big, big win. America ain't over yet. There's still a chance that we can survive. Okay, I want to get to the mailbag. Maybe I'll do one mailbag question just to give you a little taste, and then we'll have to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube and get to the rest of the mailbag. From Andrew. Mike, I just finished listening to EP 171. What happens when conservatives begin to feel the same way as the left and their useful idiots, as in they would prefer to punish their ideological opposites rather than win them over? I'm almost there, but don't really want to be. Unlike their experience producing good policies, leftists are pretty good at inviting their opponents to join them in the mud. Sometimes I feel like we should give them the terrible treatment they pretend to endure. You spoke about this issue with your guest, the idea that we're comfortable and can't stand it or have lost perspective. I do feel that a brief rash of face punching would reconvince us all that talking is a very nice alternative. Please exclude my last name if you address this comment. Thanks. My commute is consumed by the Daily Wire podcast. Sincerely, John Smith. No, I'm kidding. That's not his name. I don't even remember what the name was. That is a great question. So you seem to have been on Twitter too much. That's what happens. Because the lefties do just want to cudgel us. They totally want to just knock us over the head and smack us on this question. So they'll say, we don't want to debate, we don't want to argue, we don't want to talk to you. We're just going to shut you up and no speech and heckle you and what hecklers veto, right? My rule on this is if you're on Twitter and you genuinely get angry, that is you doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Don't do it. Like, let it go. Do not punch them in the face as much as you might want to. The way that you can convince people is by laughing at them, I think. The left is not doing itself any favors right now by screaming and whining and no, and all that. They aren't, they're losing everything. They're losing all of the ground they'd made on the culture war even. They're losing their political ground. They aren't winning elections. They haven't been winning elections since 2008, really. So keep up what we're doing. Laugh at them, expose how crazy their arguments are, and treat them like children. You wouldn't punch a child in the face, and they are behaving like little children. You've just got to take a firm stand. Don't let them get away with everything, you know. But you want them to get better. You want them to kind of see how crazy their mania has made them, and so that's all right. Next question. Do we have it?
Got it.
Okay. I think you know why. I think there were some notes on a previous question that I wanted to get to later, but they were in the wrong place. From Henry. Okay. From Henry. Michael, what do you think is a good response when people say that gender and sex are different or disconnected? This is what I think.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Proved over and over again.
Wrong.
He actually had.
That's it. It's just wrong. It's just ridiculous. It's a way that the left has tried to make you ignore the obvious reality that is right in front of you, one of the essential realities of human nature, which is the complementarity of men and women, the sexual difference between men and women. They just want you to ignore that. So they say, no, that's sex, but sex too is different. Sex, what? What do you mean sex too? Yeah, no, it's like sex, but it's different. But no, it isn't at all. Gender refers to grammar. There are gendered nouns. So in, I don't know, in Italian, the word for soccer, calcio, is masculine. It ends in an O. It takes the masculine articles, even though it's obviously a very effeminate sport. Those are different, right? It's just a grammatical construction. They apply that to human beings because they want to pretend that sex isn't a real thing, but nobody's getting fooled by that. We've got a lot more mailbag to get to. Before we do that, I'm sorry if you're on Facebook or YouTube. Got to say goodbye. You got to go to dailywire.com. Dailywire.com. You get me. You get the Andrew Klavan Show. You get the Ben Shapiro Show. All of that for $10 a month, $100 for an annual membership. None of that matters. This is what matters. The leftist tears Tumblr. They're pouring out right now. ABC News is so angry. They're accusing Paul Manafort of 5 counts of manslaughter. Not 1, not 3, 5 counts of manslaughter. You're going to want to have this, otherwise you're going to drown. Go to dailywire.com. We'll be right back. When I get to the R question,